right. Well, you know what they say about a show. Let there be carnage.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And this week, we watched Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So welcome to our review episode of that.
Sounds like we're about to do the national public radio version of the Venom Let There Be Carnage review with our public radio voices.
Yeah, so
what an opinion we want from a public radio perspective of Venom Let There Be Carnage.
That voice always reminds me of that Saturday Night Live skit, the sweaty balls.
Oh, yeah.
Of the candy confectioner stuff. So
yeah, I can't think of a single movie more the antithesis of the vibe of public radio.
Yeah. Yeah, they say knowledge is power, and that was something nobody ever had in this movie. So,
but the long-awaited sequel of the first Venom, mainly due to COVID through delays, but it's finally here. We're finally here to review it. Par the course, no spoilers until we let you know here. Probably here in a few minutes we'll start talking about the movie more in depth, but. Also, par for the course, Chris and I have not shared our opinions with each other about the movie. Usually we kind of just come here and almost like decompress and download our opinions across each other, and you guys just kind of get to listen to the conversation. So I know I caught this movie on at the Friday morning crowd, which is a very specific type of crowd at the movie theaters, right? So I was in a very I think self-selected group of just I was calling it like the middle-aged men screening, but you know when the movie ended and I got up, the crowd had diversified a little bit. So I had a very specific type of theater-going audience because the wife and I we went away for the weekend for our wedding anniversary. But Chris, I know you had a chance to see it kind of at more of like a prime time on like a Saturday.
Yeah.
What was it, late afternoon, early evening?
Yeah, it was yesterday, Saturday at like 6:15 p.m. Literally, I could have picked any like 5-minute slot I wanted to and watch this movie at my local theater.
I saw a screenshot on Twitter of somebody saying, "Finally, the movie theaters are back," and it was just a screenshot. Not a screenshot. It was a picture of the marquee at their movie theater. Every single slot was Venom Let There Be Carnage, and it's just it's like it's got to be because it's the only real thing in theaters, right? I think James Bond, it's not out yet.
That's
or
correct.
It's not
it will be
quite
Friday
out yet.
in America. Yeah.
Okay, because I know people have been seeing it, but it must be be critics that have international and critics.
International. It's the same. I think it's the same with Dune. It's got some international showings and critic showings as well. I think the only other thing right now, possibly in theaters, what was it? The Addams Family 2 was the competing movie this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to be out soon. It's October.
It was the only other thing, and I'm like,
okay.
There might have been 2 screenings of that this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I could recommend a Friday morning crowd for people that are trying to avoid children, especially in kind of like a PG-13 setting, because I didn't see a kid in sight because they're all at school. So that's my only recommendation and experience of a Friday morning showing. But
well, I went. It was peculiar because you asked me like, how is your movie theater full or not? And I was like, well, the one screening we chose. We didn't go to the XD. I didn't want to wait for like it was like at 7. And I'm like, I'd rather just go now. And we went in and I looked at the thing, and there's only 5 rows of theaters. It goes A through E. And I'm like, how small is this theater? Like, I was like, is it like one of those like little ones where they just kind of put like a classroom size setting? But apparently it's very vertical. It's just the recliner seats take up so much space because apparently everything now has a recliner seat. So I was like, I didn't know what to kind of expect. And it wasn't full because when I was walking in, I saw people getting tickets for the large format, the XD, if you will, at the Cinemark. screenings, and I was like, I don't want to wait for that. I'd rather just go now. So
yeah, but I mean, it is important to kind of observe the amount in the theater, because I would say this is the second big franchise release of kind of, hopefully, knock on wood, the tail end of the pandemic. Shang-Chi was like kind of like the first real return to theater, I would say, with a notable IP. Even though the character itself wasn't super notable, but the IP of Marvel was back in the theaters.
And it's important, the non-streaming option as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Black Widow wouldn't fall under that.
Yeah, no other option except to see this in theater. So Venom, I think some of the box office reports are out, and we'll probably talk about it maybe a little bit more on our normal weekly news episode. But surprise, surprise, it's doing pretty good. But I believe still technically you got to put the asterisk next to it of for pandemic times.
Yeah.
But it looks like we are seeing signs of box office recovery overall, though.
This is it beat the original Venom as of right now. I just pulled up CNN to make sure. Yesterday it was this is making 90.1 million, I think is what I put down here. It's 91.1. Venom originally debuted to 80 million in 2018, which is was a October box office record at the time, and I believe this will make this one the next October box office record. Also, most October movies, asterisks as well, are R-rated horror films. I believe Halloween Kills, It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, all those were R-rated films. Those usually kind of cut themselves off at the knees, right? Like they can't get everybody into those comfortably.
Yeah, I suppose. What's our November release? Is that Eternals?
Eternals, yes.
Yeah, that'll probably be a really big milestone, right? Because you're not going to have any sort of caveats of a weird like. What did they say with Shang-Chi? Like biggest, it was Labor Day, right? That's
yeah.
What's the one at the end of summer? Labor Day, right?
Yes. Don't wear white after Labor Day. Yes.
Yeah, and everyone was just like, oh yeah, I guess big movies don't come out on that weekend. And I guess you could say the same, like you said, for October with a lot of R-rated movies.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like we still have. There's always another talking point. If you wanted to kind of like a debate box office, but either way, it looks like the trend is going up. So that's good overall. People getting back to the movies, hopefully staying safe.
People went and watched this movie, whether it was because it was the only movie in theaters, or that they're showing right now, or because they wanted to see it. It's
that is the best way to put it, Chris. So on that note, I'd love to know what you thought about this film, spoiler free.
Okay, so people have listened to our original Venom review, and if you haven't, you should go back and listen to that. I would say, I'm more lukewarm on the original Venom more than you are. You're very cold deli, if you will, for that.
I think tepid, maybe, if we're using temperatures. Like,
yeah. So for me, Venom 2, I believe, is better than the original Venom because it doesn't have to do any oh my gosh, there's like half that movie is the meteor coming to Earth and like dealing with this bad guy who's running a company. Very stereotypical. This one just kind of jumps into it. You're like, okay, Venom's with Eddie and obviously we're going to get Carnage, and this is how it kind of goes. So I think the pace is much faster, and it does things. I think the action scenes in this are way better than the first film. But there are times where I'm just like, this movie is just okay. Not spectacular, not outstanding, not jaw-dropping. But I do think, something we talked about originally in the first one, you have two black Venom blobs like fighting each other at the end of the first one. This one, I never was confused who was who in the symbiote world. And I do applaud them for making a very good distinction between Carnage and Venom. In terms of look, voice, even in the darkened church fighting scenes, which Venom seems to be huge on if you look at Spider-Man 3. But maybe it's because they all have bells. I don't know. But I think there's not much else to add to that. Like, this isn't like groundbreaking. This isn't gonna change my not, I wouldn't say hesitation, but my. Yeah, I can go watch this anytime on a weekend. I don't have to go see the first showing of Venom 3, which I feel is like an inevitable at these box office rates. And I think it, hopefully, knock on wood, I'm more excited for whatever going forward with Venom than, the past two iterations, if you will. I gotta give some kudos to the cast. I believe if Tom Hardy was only half-heartedly acting in this movie, I don't think it would work nearly as well. And he goes straight crazy all the way through this. I wouldn't say quite Nicolas Cage level, but he commits to this role, despite sometimes feeling a little jarring from one scene to the next. So overall, I would say not be used Rotten Tomatoes, but like what's like a just barely fresh, is that like a 60 to 70% kind of?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to think of it in like grades in a classroom, right?
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
people can. It sounds like you're maybe
Like a
leaning
C.
in like a C plus or something.
Yeah, it's yeah, like C plus. Like, yeah, this is you turned in an assignment, you did better than the last one you did. You're learning, you're growing, but it's still not like, in a world of comic book movies with quality. Right now I think they're on the up and up, but there have been some Wonder Woman 84s in there. This isn't the best thing in the world, but I've seen worse lately. Someone did ask me, like, are there any bad Marvel movies? I'm like, did you see Fantastic Four from like 26? Like, that's like, oh yeah. So yeah, I sit in that range, if you will. So Mike, yourself, I know how you feel about the original one. I can almost predict what's coming. So lay it on me.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be the easiest movie review for me of all time, because this movie is nearly identical to the first Venom movie. I mean, barring maybe some fun conversation we could have talking about the post-credit scene and the future of the character, it felt just identical, just same themes, same type of characterization, same weirdness from Tom Hardy, similar, I would say, to underwhelming final symbiote fight at the end, underwhelming a set piece for sure. And it was just weird. It was just strange, bizarre dialogue. The movie does benefit occasionally from kind of what Ryan Reynolds gets to do with Deadpool, which is when you have a character that's kind of speaking, either behind a mask or I guess inside of Eddie Brock's body, you have a lot of opportunities in editing to kind of fix things or make things funnier. So I would say the banter between Venom and Eddie Brock can occasionally be humorous and entertaining, but a lot of times it feels like it's a little incongruent with some of the things that he says on screen, the things that they have to leave in the film because they filmed Tom Hardy saying it, and then the reply coming from the symbiote inside of his body just sometimes seems kind of odd. A weird tone of the movie where sometimes it feels like it's trying to do like a bit of a bromance type feel, but not like ironically or leaning into it or trying to have fun with it. It just kind of ended up feeling like that, and it almost feels like they kind of stumbled back into it.
Well, I think buddy comedies work where one's when they're opposites, like they're yin and a yang, right? Good cop, bad cop kind of vibe. But it feels like both these guys are just kind of losers. And they call them, like, Venom calls Eddie a loser. And like, well, Venom, we can't really say you're the greatest guy in the world because we don't get to see you a lot because you're literally inside Eddie like the whole time. So I think like it only works when both of the leads are like, or one of the leads is charismatic and the other one's like in opposition, and you see that dynamic. But like when they just tell you the dynamic, you don't get that that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say some parts of the movie did improve. The villain in the first movie was just awful, and I would say Woody Harrelson is a slight improvement overall. But then I think kind of just the action and the story kind of dips, so things still even out, and I feel like I'm left with the same exact opinion of the Venom franchise. Overall. So yeah. I mean, surprise, surprise. I feel like I usually like kind of hate this characterization when you review movies, when you tell people, well, if you like the first one, you'll like the second one, and that's just kind of a way of saying, oh, it's just kind of more of the same. But I've never felt that phrase more in my entire life. Of if you like the first Venom movie, you're going to like this movie, but I just don't quite understand it. Like, how I said I was in a self-selective theater of people that really had to wake up early on a Friday morning to go to the first showing of Venom. There was some people clapping during parts, cheering during others. And I physically like turned around at one point in time. I was like, I have to see what these people look like, because this makes no sense to me. I'm not saying that you couldn't sit down and be slightly entertained and then go on with your life after these, hour and a half, 2 hours, but to just feel the need to vocally project your joy, I cannot get into that mindset, into those shoes. So I'm happy for anybody out there that finds this joy of Venom, but I don't see it, Chris. So it'll be interesting.
Venom fans, nothing against the character, are very much a very unique group of people. They've
interesting breed.
Yeah, they've all kind of embraced the anti-hero. I think these are the people who would also and also maybe enjoyed the Punisher, like Blade people, right? Like, they're someone who is not afraid to kill. They're not the heroes like of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Who like try to avoid killing and reap those punishments. But like I agree. Like, if you like the first one, you're gonna like that's what I told my brother-in-law was visiting earlier. We were playing Halo. It's like, do you like the first one? He's like, we love it. I'm like, well, then you're gonna really like the second one. So, and honestly, I think the only way, another thing that kind of proves that is the box office growth, right? Like, about the same, little higher. I think those are the people who went and saw the first one are coming back for the second one. I mean, I kind of want to jump into spoilers a little bit if we can.
Yeah, please. Let's.
So I'm going to put the time codes here right into this. So we're going to jump into the spoilers. So I think real quick before we jump into I think the biggest spoiler, I want to save it for a little bit because I don't want people to be like, oh, that's the big spoiler.
We talking about the post credits?
Yeah. The biggest, Mike. The only thing I think that you would get joy out of this movie is the end
only
credit
thing
scene.
Slightly worthwhile. Yeah.
So I'm like he's gonna love that part. But anyway, so like spoiler wise, I think one of the cooler scenes is when Venom like kind of like goes and body jumps around on his own a little bit, and like he's at like that rave and everyone's like, oh, that's a cool costume. I'm like, oh, I would love to see more Venom, like in a casual scenario, I guess, if you will, not like just like, oh, I'm a voice in Eddie's head and I want to eat chicken or brains and stuff like that. And they tried to which was weird, they tried to justify the brain eating like with some sort of chemical that's in brains and chocolate, I think they said it was. So so it's interesting to see kind of Venom pop around a little bit when he's covered in glow sticks. I'm like, oh, that would be, I guarantee you that's a Funko Pop somewhere, Mike. I'm gonna put money on it.
Yeah, I could see that.
A Funko Pop of Venom covered in glow sticks. So I thought that was fun, and I think something Andy Serkis does really well in here is I think he leans like this movie's a little more absurd than the first one, right? The first one tries to be like, there's science and space and oh my god, we have to be very ground level. And I think Andy Serkis, who directed this, and I think the story, even Tom Hardy got a credit on it, leans into that absurdness a little bit more. Like, it feels like the orphanage burning down, and the whole scene with retelling Cletus's life through hand drawings. What did you think of that? I thought that was some cool animation, but I mean,
yeah, it was an interesting way to get the story across. I mean, we've seen it before in the Birds of Prey film with Harley Quinn's past. I like the art style. It kind of reminded me of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, which is a comic / graphic novel that Jonan Vasquez worked on before he created Invader Zim. So it fit the art style vibe for sure.
It reminded me of was it the Deathly Hallows? A
little bit.
It's like, oh, we drew these things on paper. Now the papers kind of come to life, kind of thing. So that was interesting. But I feel they didn't. This would really, one of the movies, I think, I don't say this very often, would benefit from an R rating.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Not just from like the characterization of Cletus Cassidy, who just honestly feels like such stereotypical, uninspired serial killer, right? Like, they're basically doing every cheesy trope you've ever seen. He says like weird soliloquies, like speaks in poems, as I think was literally said in the film.
Yeah, he repeated the same poems too, which was like it came across, like, earlier on I was like, oh, maybe he's like a savant kind of person, but then like he's repeating the same lines over and over again. He's just crazy at this point.
Yeah, and there was an attempt to make us sympathize with him from his rough upbringing, and I suppose, it's not a surprising origin for a serial killer, and it is fun to sympathize with a villain, but I don't think Cletus needed to really be empathetic at all. We just wanted him to be crazier, and he never really got to the point of, I would say, frightening.
I think, a couple things. The origin of Cletus mirrors his comic origin. I'm gonna applaud them for that. Whether it was a tug at the heartstrings, making him sympathetic, that is his origin in the comic book. So I will give him that. But I think one of the things is they again this movie kind of suffers from it. Told us, it didn't show us why he's a serial killer, how he got to where he was, right? Like, the opening scene is him, a younger person with Woody Harrelson's voice dubbed over, and him in the Shriek, right? They're like the little love connection there. But like, I'm more interested, like, why is Cletus a serial killer? Like, what was his motives? Like, why did he kill these people? Rather than like, we see the last minutes of his life on death row, and then he becomes Carnage. Not anything kind of before that, really, right? Like, it's just happened to be like a very specific moment in life where he gets this.
Yeah. And speaking of like the rated R angle, I suppose you could give credit to Andy Serkis through some of the more creative points that made the film stand out a little bit more than the first one. But I mean, I feel like maybe come up with a way to make this feel like a PG-13 movie and not just an R-rated movie that you had to cut away from the gore, right? It seems like the easiest solution to attempt to not show someone being decapitated is just to swivel the camera 30 degrees away from the neck, to just hide that being decapitated. Like, there was just like not a lot of creativity there. Like, maybe give me like a silhouette of Carnage projected on a wall, like snapping somebody's head off, so we do get to see the whole animation, but it's cloaked, or do something like cheeky where like maybe there's like I don't know, like a cantaloupe or something, or like a watermelon that obscures the head in like an alley or something. It was just always like a cutaway. It was just always a swivel, and it's just like, okay, come on, like, really?
I feel they did this, and those cuts are out there, and they just are like, well, we got to get to PG-13 to get more.
And honestly, it feels like the unrated Steelbook, right? Let's just hold off and make some more money there. But
I feel like it's there, but like they wanted to put butts in seats, Mike. You know this. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm just not the type of person that's going to go out and buy that unrated Steelbook just to see it. But yeah, I feel like I really needed more of an edge from Cletus, because I think the most brutal, really, we ever saw him was when he just runs in as Woody Harrelson, without the symbiote, and he just like kind of beats that dude up at the gas station. Yeah. But it all happens behind the counter, right? Yeah. So, and also with that scene, I saw the comic book panel shared, right? I understand that it is indeed canon within the comic books for Carnage to use his symbiote to hack into the internet. But like, that's cheesy 90s comic books, right? In this movie, it's just stupid, and I know the whole movie is kind of weird and bizarre as well, but like, that was like pretty glaring, right? That just seemed like, oh, we need to get Cletus moving, we needed to get the plot going, just have him hack into the computer and like find Ravencroft. And I think the most laughable part of it all was like, the second the symbiote touches the screen, the monitor shows like Ravencroft Institute. Like, they don't even show him opening up like a browser or a command terminal. It's just like automatically there. So it's just like, oh god, okay, this is the movie that I'm in for.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that you're in for it. It was already too late at that point. I feel like that's like the
too late to turn back.
That's like the midpoint of the movie. But like, there was a scene like some things I think they didn't need to R-rate up. I did enjoy the the Carnage through the prison cell. It was very nice to see him actually use his abilities, like his unique ability, like stabbing, pointing, throwing stuff, becoming a whirlwind. Like, he was actually using things that were different than the other movie and different than Venom right out the gate. I'm like, thank God that he's not just taking his tendrils and smacking people with them. Like,
I mean, I'm glad you liked it, Chris, because I don't know if I just lost count through the film, or like maybe I went into a fugue state for about 30 or 40 minutes. But beyond just the prison escape scene, I think there's only one real action set piece in the movie. It's the prison escape, and it's the church scene at the end. There's kind of a wacky, quirky fight where Venom bounces from Eddie's body and jumps down into the alley. But like, there is just not a lot of fun to be had in this film, at least from my point of view. I was pretty excited to see like this church set piece show up, because I was like, I feel like I've been in this movie theater for a little too long. All right, here's our final set piece. Let's really do it out. And man, I thought that church scene was incredibly underwhelming. I thought we were going to get something like really creative, really innovative. All right, we got our Red Carnage symbiote, who has a few new tricks. They even like showed off this like tornado skill that he had, which seems like it's ripped straight from the comic book, because that seems like something they would give the ability of a symbiote back in the comic book days. And like it doesn't even elevate to that level of excitement in the final fight scene. It felt so underwhelming. I was expecting there was going to be a scene where like maybe Cletus was going to get away from the church at the last second, and we were going to have like maybe one final set piece with Venom and Carnage at another locale, but then it just kind of ends there at the church, and he just eats the symbiote, and I'm like, that's it, really? I mean, I did not really pull out any creative choreography with the symbiotes. And I think I saw a comment online that summed it up pretty well, what I was thinking of. Oh, I wonder what a sonic contrivance they'll come up with for the third movie for Venom to defeat the villain. Because like if fire and sound are the only real weaknesses, you're just always on the lookout for it, right? I mean, so it's just, I was so underwhelmed by that final fight scene, and I was just like, all right, let's just go balls to the wall. You know, you've been saving it up for this big bad confrontation between Venom and Carnage, these two iconic characters, and not a whole lot happened. So I thought that was pretty disappointing. Yeah,
well, I think to me it feels that there should be another. The Carnage shouldn't have been, I guess, killed. If I had my way here, I think there's the hey father, I'm going to kill you. It feels really unearned, because they never met until literally that moment, right? Like at any other time, did Venom and Carnage meet other than the ending scene? I don't think so. So I'm just trying to think. I'm like, I really don't think.
Yeah, and
like,
I mean, Carnage was so compelled as soon as he got into Woody Harrelson's body to be like, oh, there's somebody else out there stronger than me. We got to go get him. Yeah. And I guess you could say like, oh, Venom hive mind. He just knows of the other. But it's just like you got to build up the reason why. I mean, even if it's just like one little thing of just like, oh, if I defeat Venom, if I consume him, I will become all powerful. Right. But no, the point was just like he just wanted that obstacle out of the way, even though he wasn't being actively pursued at that point in time. It actually took Eddie a while to kind of figure out that Carnage was a thing that existed. Right. They could have just bounced out of town and gone anywhere and just like consumed brains all over the world, and like Eddie wouldn't have found out for a while.
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the the flaws of serial killers, or like, I guess Cleese, he wanted to be famous, like, and that's why he kind of stuck around. But I feel the animosity between Venom and Carnage wasn't, if it was there, it wasn't earned yet. It should have been, that should have been something in the middle of the film where they met, fought once, and then had another quote unquote set piece at the end. Of the battle.
I'm admittedly not a symbiote expert from the comic books, but apparently the story between Cletus and Carnage is that they are kind of meant to be. Yeah. They're not really conflicting. They're a bonded pair. I think there's like never been more of a perfect symbiotic relationship, which I believe that sentiment was kind of spat in the face at the end of the third act, when they're just like, see, they're not symbiotic. We can take advantage of that. Luckily for me, I didn't really know that until I did a little bit of internet research, but I suppose some people could be rubbed the wrong way. Yeah,
and some, I mean, the other thing of Venom, like, I think it's inherently paternicide, like, or whatever it is, like, they want to kill their maker, like, right away, like, or something like that, I guess. Because even, like, there's more, like, remember the game Maximum Carnage from where you had to fight, like, 5 other symbiotes, like, along the way to get to Carnage. So I think it's just part of it. Like, they didn't really do a good job explaining it. But I will tell you, let's get to the big point here. This movie's in the MCU now. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
It's hard to imagine any other.
I believe, I'm going to predict, Mike, this is Doctor Strange's spell merging all of the Sony universes into the MCU at large. And since Venom is a Sony property, as well as Dr. Octopus, that version of him and that Goblin, right? Were Sony properties in those films. So to bring them over, they're merging all the Sony properties into one thing. So I believe they're now in the MCU.
Yeah, we'll actually talk a little bit more about kind of universes of Marvel merging on our weekly news episode, so make sure you're subscribed so you can check that out. I saw it in the show notes, Chris. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it here in a little bit. But I am kind of curious how much of this is Doctor Strange's spell and how much of this is the collapse of the multiverse from Loki's doing. Is this going to be a combination of the two, or what exactly is going on here? Either way, I think from that post-credit scene, it's fairly obvious. I mean, with the J. Jonah Jameson on the TV, even using like the same kind of television graphics, kind of like that green theme that's surrounding him. Those are the same kind of like colors that they used at the end of Tom Holland's last Spider-Man movie as well.
And then guess what? It was Tom Holland himself on there, and he's like licking the screen. I'm like, you have nothing against Spider-Man yet. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is like total like typical like Venom or / in association with Marvel. Character motivations of just like, just say that's what he wants. We don't really need to describe it. We don't need any backstory. Venom and Spider-Man, they just go together like peanut butter and chocolate. So just say that he wants them. So hopefully, this is kind of like what I'm getting at. Like the only positives I can really find out of this Venom franchise now is just the weird Tom Hardy relationship with the voice actor that plays Venom. I can't remember the voice actor's name off the top of my head.
Is it not Tom Hardy again? Tom Hardy was in the first one.
Oh, is it? And they're doing some really good vocal adjustments, because it sounds like a professional voice actor to me. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't know. But either way, it's weird, but at the very least, it's a decision, right? It's a weird decision. We're holding true to it, and we're moving forward. This is just how Venom is. Like, okay, it's weird, but let's hope that Kevin Feige can craft and hire a better story editor, script, just craft something that's a little bit better and more entertaining within this Marvel universe. I'm really curious what this does with Sony's universe overall. Like, we're still waiting for Morpheus to come out.
Morbius,
not Morpheus.
Morpheus is the Matrix.
Yeah, I mean, Morpheus will be coming back here momentarily on HBO Max.
1 month before Morbius, even.
Yeah, and there possibly might be a Craven movie out there in the works. So yeah, it does make you wonder how much of this multiversal shifting will be permanent and will be temporary, right? Because like we've said before in the past, a lot of these characters have pre-existing relationships in their universe. And if you thrust them from their universe to kind of just put all your toys into one box and so they can all fight and play and have fun, that's great for us when we're watching it on the movie screen. But eventually these characters have to realize, I can't just stay in your version of New York City forever. All of my loved ones and my family are back in my universe. Even though I'd love to stay here and play around and maybe fight Galactus in a couple Marvel phases. That could be fun. I kind of need to go back home. So I think it's going to be a combination of both. They're going to be like, how many ties does this character have to their universe? Not that many. Let's keep him in ours. Let's shift this one back there. So it seems like Eddie and Venom are relatively detached from their universe, wouldn't you say? I mean, they kind of he kind of decided to leave his ex-wife permanently. He's kind of past that phase. She's kind of with that dude.
He said his title multiple times, Mike. They are now the Lethal Protector. If you didn't know this, they are the Lethal Protector, Mike. Did you know? Together, they are the Lethal Protector. But anyway. Yes, I think he kind of like. I think he like. I mean, that was the only difference is the Patrick Mulligan character. His eyes went white at the end of the film, whatever that means.
I think this is supposed to signify toxin or some point. But like if Tom Hardy is truly removed from his universe, right? Well, I guess it might not necessarily be isolated to him.
Right.
It could be their entire character set moves into this new universe. That could be a possibility.
It could be, but he has essentially left San Francisco behind, right? He has gone to an island somewhere. He's on a beach with Venom, and then they're in their little. I think the second one would look more like maybe Taiwan or something in that range. Before everything was merged, or I guess the universe was changed, and he was then back again in a beach house, looking at the announcement that Tom Holland, or I guess Peter Parker, is Spider-Man from the television. So they could literally ignore the rest of these films, or these first 2 films, and I'd be fine with that.
Ooh, I'd love that.
I believe Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock and Venom is it's really, I don't think it's a bad choice. I think they can continue to go ahead and do this, and it's not going to bother me at all if he's in it. Hopefully the next movie, or if we see him in the MCU, it will probably, hopefully, knock on wood, be Kevin Feige led rather than what was the producer's name?
Avi. Yeah. What I would love to see is just really just go balls to the wall with this character now. Throw him out there in a spaceship with maybe some of the Guardians of the Galaxy or some sort of international group. They go to like a symbiote world and just go down that whole weird rabbit hole of a necro sword and all of this other stuff. Just take it cosmic, because the way that Tom Hardy is playing this character is so weird. It just cannot be bound to a terrestrial Earth, just because it just is so bizarre. And I think the only real last thought I have is I think it's pretty poignant to note that we have barely even mentioned the character Shriek, right? Because she is pretty inconsequential to the whole plot, even though she drives a lot of Cletus's motivations. It's so strange to have a character in a symbiote movie whose only main superpower is sound, and it never truly is really used as a weapon towards the symbiote. It's almost used as like an irritant towards Carnage, and that's really what splits Cletus and Carnage up, is that she's loud and it irritates me, so I'm going to be really mean to her. And then I guess there at the end she shrieks at the bell and it detaches the bell, but even though she's never really directly pointed at a symbiote and just annihilates them, right? It's just so weird that she's even there to begin with.
Right, and you think, I think Carnage would be like, well, because the symbiotes can die from sound, that he would be like, okay, well, let's use her to our advantage.
Yeah.
I thought there would be like a weak point where maybe Carnage got Eddie and Venom couldn't come out because of the sound. I agree. Shriek is, again, poignant to the character Cletus Cassie in the comic books, but very kind of just an obsession of Cletus in this movie rather than actual someone who provides anything along the way. Yeah. I think the early setup between the cop who shot her and lost his he had no hearing. I thought that was going to come into play. He could take his hearing aid out and not have to listen to Shriek or any be able to help in any situation, but instead he was just kind of beat up and hung by a chain at the top of the building, which is kind of a letdown for him, because I thought there would be more. The storylines were converging in a great way. They just really underutilized everything.
And a big pet peeve of mine, I think the last time we talked about it was the Army of the Dead Zack Snyder Netflix movie, was at the end you're really hoping your main character is going to find a creative way to defeat the villain. There's got to be some sort of turn, something clever, some way that maybe the character even goes through a bit of a change, and they find some sort of secret power that they unlock, some sort of emotional arc or triumph. And at the end of Army of the Dead, none of that happens. They just shoot the zombie or something, and then they're dead. And in this, it feels kind of the same. You think there's going to be some sort of creative solution between Eddie and Venom, to get the one up on Carnage, but they're just oh wait, that's right, sound. So they just tendril whip the Shriek, and she just falls. Did you think she was actually going to scream at the bell, and the bell was going to detach, and then it was going to crumble the church, and then then Carnage would fall and be detached enough that you could eat him? It's just the series of the events is just okay, whatever. It wasn't in this movie.
It wasn't sound at all. It was Venom and Eddie knew that Cletus had an affection for this woman, and Carnage did not. So by killing her, it caused them to not to break apart again and make him vulnerable. Now I did get I was hoping to get Amazing Spider-Man 2 vibes from this, where Carnage was going to try to reach down and grab her, but she was going to hit the ground and die. Instead, I thought that would have been a better homage to Spider-Man than anything else in this movie. I think if they would have done that, and that would have been a stronger ending. But rather than just kill her and then knock a bell on her, I don't know. That was, I thought there would be more to that too. It just kind of was it game Mousetrap where the trap just kind of fell down? I'm okay.
Or maybe Woody Harrelson's or Cletus's, I go back and forth between how I should
That's fine.
talk about these characters, is so physically bonded to this relationship with Shriek that when she starts to fall, he tears himself out of Carnage, right? And jumps down the bell tower to try to save her, to be with her in her last moments of life, and then they're finally separated. And, that didn't even happen.
Right,
so.
and that would have made, again, not a redemption for Cletus, but, made him, he is a sympathetic character because all he ever wanted was someone who loved him for who he was. And, they didn't even do that for us.
Yeah, I never thought I could possibly miss 2 black goo balls fighting on the side of a spaceship taking off, but... To me, that was a little bit more exciting than this.
But I'm going to disagree because I don't remember a single goddamn thing about that spaceship fight. Other than that, there were 2 black goo balls. I think the other thing is, if this comes into any Marvel properties, I believe wholeheartedly, Morbius is already set in the MCU when it airs, or will very quickly move over by the end of the film, simply because that's why we saw what's his name, Batman. Michael Keaton in the trailer, remember? Who plays Vulture? Remember he was in the Morbius trailer for some reason?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So maybe by the end of Morbius, it does the same thing where it merges all these universes together. Now, it does make me think, I still think it's the Lizard in that trailer for Doctor Strange, not Venom, but it could now be Venom in that trailer with Doctor Strange.
I suppose, even though Venom does not have any motivation to go after Spider-Man.
Right.
But,
at least not immediately like that. Anyway, I think that's the biggest thing. None of this before affects the MCU going forward, but Venom can now float into the MCU properly if they want to, and use Tom, or if they ever split Tom at the end, maybe at the end of Far From Home, they spit Tom Holland out into his own universe and away from ours, away from the MCU. I don't know. I never thought about that possibility till literally just now. But I think it's very exciting to get Venom proper with Spider-Man coming down the road, right? I think that's what everyone wants. And after 3 movies, the first 2 don't make you earn that at all by having them, but I think we will get that probably. Before 2030, I'm betting. What do you think? Next 5 years, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I can't believe I've never really thought about this before. And all of these contracts between studios and characters are all secret, and people are all speculating to begin with. But Sony made the deal with Marvel for Spider-Man and its world. Back in the
90s.
Early 90s, right?
Mid 90s.
That was well before the character of Miles Morales was ever created, right? I wonder if in the contracts it stipulated and future characters created, right? I wonder if there's a way that, you can kick Peter Parker kind of out of the MCU, and then Marvel can just switch over to a Miles Morales in the live action universe and just not have to deal with Sony at all. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know what the contract is written as, but I mean, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised too. Marvel and Disney, they got a lot of money. They could just do it and just make it happen. And then when Sony comes in with a lawsuit, just could be well, look at this. Look at the fine print here. We're ready to go to court with it.
I don't think there will be a lawsuit. I don't think there'll be conflict. Remember when they thought they lost Spider-Man? What was it, 2 years ago? And there was that Tom Holland said he made some calls to get Spider-Man back in the MCU. I believe they went over some stipulations look, you can't do this perpetually anymore. We want to work with you, not against you, so let's figure this out. So I believe this ending of Venom was ironed out years ago, and we're just now kind of getting to it, because this would have been last year, right? Last October. We're now a year behind on this movie. So I think you're right. I think Miles Morales is a question mark. I don't think they could say they have a Spider-Man movie. They'd have to change his name probably. But that's what are they doing with the Hulk, right? And giving the middle finger to Universal the whole way through, right? They're like, oh, we don't have to have a Hulk movie. We can have a She-Hulk TV show.
And who knows? This could be their leveraging arm with Sony too. Hey, guess what? Everybody loves Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Hell, you know it yourself. You've made an animated movie. According to this contract, we can just make all the live-action movies with him. Not only does he have a kick-ass black suit, which everybody loves, he has new, interesting powers, and he's also a more interesting, diverse character for a modern audience. People are going to lose it when he goes live action. His uncle is Donald Glover.
Yeah.
Like, we are primed, set, ready to not need Peter Parker for a while now. So, you know, maybe just play ball with us. I would be curious to see if that's leverage.
There is money to be made for everybody if done properly, is probably what they told him. Like, let's work together and we can all be rich at the end of the day, because Spider-Man, whether it's Miles or Peter, will sell. You've made animated movies and video games based on their names. Let's do this together. So I bet there's more to this that we just don't know yet.
Yeah.
And hopefully Morbius gets Jeff Lobed, if you will, just removed right out of there.
Either way, at the end of the day, the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies are some of my favorite MCU movies in the catalog, and it just sometimes feel unfortunate that his other cast of characters kind of gets relegated to the weird Avi Arad universe, which I tend to not like.
Well, the first two were great, but you know, when they got greedy, they stopped being good.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of hoping that, you know, Chris, we got at least, conservatively, I think we got at least another 40, 50 years left on this planet. Venom will be rebooted at some point in time, and maybe the second go around I'll like it a little bit more. But as of this juncture, the movies, not for me.
Yeah,
but,
not for you. Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. Go back, listen to the first review of Venom, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot of this.
I believe we said about the same as we did with the first one. Like, I don't hate it. I like going to movies. I like some big dumb action. I love Woody Harrelson as I think he did a better serial killer in Natural Born Killers, but I feel that would have been way too R-rated for this. You know, again, I was with my wife. She didn't know Andy Serkis directed this, so when she saw his name, she was very shocked and surprised. She's like, "Oh," and you know, we talked about, you know, how less so Carnage and Cletus, but more Eddie and Venom were kind of like the Gollum characters, right? In the Lord of the Rings that you know, Andy Serkis is known for doing. So I think, you know, I would love to see a better Venom versus Carnage film. I think they both deserve better, but I believe this is a better Venom than we got in the first movie. And I really hope to see that he is, quote unquote, a lethal protector in any future outing, and not just relegated to eating chickens and throwing bad guys in dumpsters, if you will. Well, Mike, we've got some regular news to cover this week, so we're going to jump over to that. But if people know what you're up to, what you're doing, where can they find you at?
Well, they can follow me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and you can read my webcomics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you, where can they find you? You
can find me on Instagram, Valdan87, VALDAN87, or Twitter under just Valdan. People want to know more about, you know, the show, what we do. We're here literally every week. We don't remove movies every week, but we have news every single week, including all this Venom stuff we've been covering for the past how many years now? Since after the show started. Where can people find more of that at?
Oh, all you got to do is visit superheroslate.com. That's the best place to find all the avenues we host our show and to find our other movie reviews. We've been doing this for like 6 years now, so I feel like we've gotten the majority of the MCU and the new DC universe that's been stemming off. So if you want to catch up and see our opinions of our other superhero movies out there in the world, head on over to superheroslate.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Why did I say it that way? YouTube, Spotify.
yes, some Brooklyn accent there.
Yeah, Spotify and wherever else you'd like to listen to find podcasts. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and you can get merch at superheroslate.com/store. Please reach out and let us know what you thought about Venom, especially compared to the first one, because I'm really curious if you thought this one was better, if you thought it was worse. What do you think of the post-credit scene? What do you want to see Venom do next? I think that's going to be what everybody is anticipating. And if you want to be a super fan of the show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, make sure you are vaccinated so it just becomes safer and safer to go back to the movie theaters with each new movie that comes out.
You don't want to catch you don't want to catch a symbiote. Let's be honest.
Yes, you don't want to catch a symbiote because I mean, like, chicken's okay, but you don't want to eat it all the time. I mean, you'll be chicken and chocolate. It's just too much.
You'll be putting a mediocre movie as well. So
yes, exactly. And we will be here every week, folks.
All right, see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
I'm having a moment. I got like caffeine here. I'm so tired. I don't know why I'm so tired. I don't know why.